So Deepak introduced us, maybe give you some insight about what's going on in India, and maybe you succeed. Maybe people will like to visit India right now. And now we want to discuss about how India is an opportunity as an industry and as a market, especially in IT, because you mentioned innovation is very important in India. IT is very important in India. Services are very important in India. So I will ask Christophe CHÂLONS to give us an overview of the market, services and IT market in India and versus the rest of the world, how India compares to the other region in terms of IT services and offshoring. Okay? We have a presentation. So maybe we can run the slides. Okay, so IT, India, emerging market. Christophe?
Okay, so I think when we think about India, the first thing is everybody thinks about the offshore industry, so India more as an industry delivering IT services to customers in the USA, in Europe, in France, and so on. The other side of India is it's also an interesting market. It's part of the emerging economies, and I just wanted to give you a few data on this market just to put this market in the context.
So we will paint a worldwide view of the IT market.
Exactly. So I think what is interesting is, by the way, I was in India at a NASSCOM event in February to discuss this topic, is our emerging markets an alternative for growth for the Indian industry, because Indian industry sees right now the slowdown of growth in the USA, in the UK, and is a little bit afraid of the crisis in the Eurozone. So it seems the Indian companies, the Indian IT services companies are now rediscovering the domestic market. And so the first thing I told them is, yes, these are interesting markets, these are fast-growing markets, but don't forget the respective size of the different markets. So if we talk really about just IT services, software would be a similar percentage, but India just represents approximately 1% of the worldwide IT services market. And all the emerging countries together, so including the BRIC countries, but also further ones like Malaysia and Eastern Europe and so on, represent something like 13% of the worldwide IT services market.
So 1%, but tremendous growth.
So in terms of growth, clearly we see that the growth there is above 15%, which is much more than countries like France, where we are right now at 0 to 1% growth. So clearly there is a lot of growth potential. But also don't forget, no matter whether you are an Indian company or a European company, the margin you will do in India will not be the same as the margin you can do in France or in Germany or in the US. I think what is interesting to do is, first of all, from a market point of view, to follow your customers to countries like India, because they are developing in India, like they are developing in China and so on, so you can follow your customers there. And also prepare for the future. It means it is clear that right now the multinational corporations mainly come from the US, partly from Europe, but in the future we will see a lot of strong MNCs in any industry, manufacturing or finance and so on, or telecom, which will come from these countries. So it's time to identify these companies and to start to know where they are, who they are, and to think about how can you follow them across the world.
Let me ask Deepak to comment on that special topic. What's your take on that? And for the growth and the opportunities, India obviously is very small because we started later than the other countries, and now the growth is very important. We talk about margins. What's your answer to that?
Very true, and I think it's a while the numbers are very large in terms of, very small in terms of number, I think one should not close his mind to the fact that it is a very, very evolving market. I think we are seeing some very exciting things happen in the area of domain of internet, the internet security, and above all the opportunity where there is a combination of hardware and software. So I think if you are looking in terms of trying to feel for new markets, India is the best place to manufacture, where hardware and software can be combined together to produce a world-class product. And here one can give an example of the fact that the best known product that you use today is the Apple iPhone. The Apple iPhone, not a single part of that product is produced in the United States. So here is a company, which made about $15 billion of profits last year by not manufacturing anything in the US.
But what part of the iPhone are made in China, in India, sorry?
I think they do a little bit on the software front, but not very much in hardware. But here is an opportunity for French companies.
India, so it's a software specialty. And Christophe, we'll go back to you. And about how does we see a tremendous growth for the IT services and offshoring. We also have a question in the room saying that India is being for a long time an offshore destination from France for a long time. And maybe you have a take on that, on how IT service supplier, how the market has changed those last couple of years.
Yes. So I think there are different point of views regarding the IT services industry and IT services market. The first thing is we can consider the pure play players, so the Indian players, and we see 5 years ago there was no Indian company in the top 20 in Europe. The first one was Tata, and with tremendous growth.
You might not read
70%.
the whole the slide, but it basically said the first Indian company in 2006 is at the 23rd rank. It's ranking 23rd. That was in 2006.
That was 2006. The second one was ranking 35th, and the third one ranking 35th. So really, and 5 years before, they were doing something like $100 million, not even euro, in Europe.
And how does that change?
It changed quite a lot. So if we have a look at the ranking from last year in Europe, we saw 3 Indian companies very strongly positioned. So Tata number 11, Wipro number 19, and Infosys ranking 26. And what we see also is clearly the growth of these companies is much higher than the growth of the remaining players. So from a pure IT services industry, we see India very strongly growing.
And maybe I ask Deepak, do you think we will see Indian IT suppliers in the top 3? And in what time frame?
Well, that's a big challenge, and I think more than the top 3, what I would really want to visualize is looking in terms of partnerships with India. I think here is a great opportunity and challenge for European companies if they have to stay ahead of the competition. Most of the major US offshore developers that you see in India, almost all of them are there. So I think as the business is getting intensely competitive, and if you have to stay ahead of the competition, I think a partnership with India, whether we come in number 3 or number 4, is immaterial. But a partnership with India is a must.
Mm-hmm. That might answer a question from Sébastien Chatelier, who said, "What's was there any room left for a small French company trying to enter the Indian market? How should a French company, a small French company, be implemented itself in the French market?" But I think we'll have a special chat with him because you have many information to give him.
I think if you look at the Indian players itself, way back in 87, 88, Infosys didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So, here's, when we look at the French market or we look at the smaller companies in France, we're looking at 2 very distinct aspects of business. One is, for them to stay competitive here, whether it is the French market or the European market, they need help in terms of being competitive. They need to also understand the needs and requirements of a customer. And here is where Indian companies can come in very handy. So we are looking at some very state-of-the-art technologies coming out of India, some state-of-the-art development happening within India, and I think that can certainly be channelized into the European market, and the French companies need to move, that's all.
Yeah. So that's exactly what Christophe CHÂLONS is showing in this table, how does the Indian supplier compare and operate outside of their own country.
So I think here what we see is we see already a very strong Indian industry present in selected European countries, especially the UK, but also Switzerland, the Benelux. You see two countries where there is still no Indian in the top 30, which are France and Germany.
Very in the middle. There are the three columns in the middle. France, Germany, and Italy. No purple spot. There's no Indian.
Italy and Spain are not really offshore markets, but there is really a good potential in France and Germany. We will see in Germany, with 2011 rankings, the first two Indian entering the top 30, probably Infosys and Tata. The first one in France should be very pro, but it will not be this year. So there is still a strong gap here. How
will we do that? Will we partner with French IT supplier? It might also be because French IT services are pretty strong in the worldwide base. How do you think they will enter the market?
Okay,
partnership with the big one, the Capgemini and
well, they've been trying for many years to understand the market. So I think the first thing, the first issue for them was to realize the differences. It's normal. I mean, they came from India, they developed in the US, from the US to the UK, which was somehow similar, and then they started to discover continental Europe, and they saw, okay, 10 countries with different business models, different culture, and so on, so quite difficult. The first thing is, again, to recognize the differences. The second thing is to accept them. And it was not easy for everybody. And some of them accepted the differences and said, OK, we have to react, to adapt. Some others said, I don't care. And they didn't succeed.
That's why they're so strong in the UK, for instance, because the culture is similar.
Yes. But they are strong also. We see, again, not only the UK, but countries like Switzerland or Benelux, they are very strong in. So in the last 2 to 3 years, we saw really the Indian companies learning a lot how to behave in France or in Germany, how to adapt the organization to hire local native speakers.
Do you have a time frame when they will be able to enter the market and we will be successful?
I think they're already successful from a small level. So today they have market shares. Each of them is below 1% market share in these countries. But we are still in a very splitted industry, so it's not critical. But they are already very successful with selected accounts, very big accounts in the manufacturing industry, in the banking industry. And what is very important is it started with low cost. It started with offshore just to save money. And now more and more these companies are really strong in consultancy. They're able to generate innovation. So not all of them, but at least the leading ones.
Okay. And what about the maturity of the market, the offshore market? Because France, as you said before, is already offshoring a lot, working a lot with India in terms of offshoring. And what's the maturity of the market worldwide?
So I think here we see a comparison of the maturity between some of the countries, so at least the USA and European countries. We see the leading country in terms of offshore maturity is the UK, with nearly 20%, and 20% in euro means something like 40 to 50% in days or hours. So it's really a lot, and we calculated it will be difficult to achieve 30%. So you will reach a limit because you cannot offshore all the projects. And second, the trend is also not to offshore the whole of a project, but to have at least 20 to 30% on-site, onshore. So here we see that countries like the UK, they are coming closer to the limit. The USA is a little bit below. Don't forget that in the US you have a very strong defense market, which is not really going to offshore a lot. After that, you see countries like, again, Switzerland, Benelux, Finland, Sweden. And we see France and Germany below the 10% still today. Okay. Below the 10%, but with a very strong growth dynamic. We see right now the Indian players growing by 40 to 50% in these countries.
And how about the other way around, the direct offshore?
So the direct offshore, so here we are differentiating, by the way, the direct from indirect, which means here we are just talking about the pure play players, the Tatas and Infosys. In the slide before, we were also including the offshore activities of Capgemini or Accenture and so on. So what we see here is that again, in the mature countries like UK, USA, the Indian players are catching already half of the offshore market. In France or in Germany, it's much more the traditional, so again, an Accenture and IBM, a Capgemini, a Steria, who catch the bulk of this offshore market.
So where are the opportunities then?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think if we think about this public here, the opportunities are both for the IT suppliers themselves, the Indian suppliers themselves, but also for the European industry, and I would say the European IT industry, but also the European companies. India is a very strong location for offshoring part of your IT, no matter whether you are an IT supplier or you are an IT customer. And I think what is interesting in India, you have a very interesting cost level. Clearly, this is the basic, but you have also a very strong qualification of the people you can find there. There is a huge pool of people you can hire. I mean, if you try to hire IT specialists in India and do the same in Eastern Europe or do the same in smaller APAC countries, you will see that in India, within 2 days, you have 200 CVs. In other countries, within 2 months, you will have 5 CVs. So there is really a huge pool of talent, and not only of people, but also really of good people, highly qualified, with a very strong training industry, education industry. So I think here, a very strong technology know-how. This is for me the real strength of India. I think there are still things to where India has to improve, or some challenges there. Clearly, you see in India very strong, very fast increasing salaries. But I mean, even if it increased from 1 to 1.5, if you compare that to 5 in Europe, no matter. There is strong attrition, but even there, the situation is starting to improve a little bit. The market is starting to stabilize as the growth rates are slowing down in the US or in the UK. Maybe the difficulty for European companies to work, especially for continental European companies to work with Indian companies, is to recognize the cultural differences. And the way people work together is not the same.
So let me ask Deepak, and we will close with that. Obviously, there are some weaknesses and some challenges for in the Indian market. You acknowledge that. But what are you doing? Because that's your job, trying to level those weaknesses and those challenges and try to answer the most of the company, the entrepreneurs that want to make some business in India.
Well, very true. There are cultural differences, but I think life itself is an evolving process. So unless and until you participate, you will not be able to measure the difference. And one thing which is very sure about India is that the opportunities that are available both within India and out of India. One thing that I can assure the entire audience here is that, if and ever that you come visit and do business with India, you will certainly emerge as a winner and also a lot richer, not only in business, but you can emerge much richer in life. That is what India offers.
I think there will be the closing word, because I don't know what to add to that. So go ahead. Dive in, what I'll say. And there will be challenges, but make you stronger. I think we can thank Deepak and Christophe CHÂLONS, Deepak Sareen and Christophe CHÂLONS, and for their answers. And maybe they gave you an insight and gave you the idea or what's going on in India and how you can make business there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.